incredible. People are out of their office buildings, watching, crying, taking pictures. I've never seen anything like it down here.
Jane, you said you saw the first plane. Did you get a glimpse of what kind of plane that was? We were told it was a small commuter plane.
Well, it wasn't a Cessna or anything like that. It was a larger plane, a mid-sized plane, and we could hear it very low. And walking down the street, a couple of us looked at each other, thinking, what's happening? Then it veered drastically on its side through the buildings and then went into the upper floors of the World Trade Center tower.
And we want to just mention that when the impact hit the first tower, you would hope that people who were in the second tower were beginning to evacuate, especially if air traffic control had some indication that this was deliberate. You'd hope that they were starting to get people out of the other tower before this second plane hit that tower.
But I mean, if you've tried to go up, you know, we've been upstairs in the towers of in the restaurant up there to try to get down.
I mean, the elevators would have been jammed, no question, but if there was an indication that this was deliberate in the first case, you'd hope that they would immediately begin evacuation in the second tower.
We've got another eyewitness that we'd like to speak with. Dan Dietrich is on the phone. Dan, tell me where you are and what you're seeing or what you saw.
Okay, what I saw was one plane coming in low from the north down over 7th Avenue. It crashed into the top or the middle of one of the towers. 10 minutes later, I saw another plane crash into the other side of the tower at a lower level. It looked to me a small, commercial plane, the first plane that I saw. It crashed into the top of the tower, and there was a huge fireball, and there was a gaping hole in the side of the tower. As we were waiting outside and looking at it, another plane came in low, I believe from the other side, and hit the the middle of the other tower. Now, I saw both planes, two separate planes, crash into each tower.
And Dan, and again, the size of the planes, tell me about that.
I would say that the plane was a mid-size, looked to be a commercial airline. I don't know. I thought perhaps, a commercial airline, a mid-size, not a jumbo jet.
This, of course, is unconfirmed, but we are getting information from an employee of United Airlines. And again, we want to emphasize this is unconfirmed, but there is speculation that an American Airlines plane was hijacked and crashed on purpose into the World Trade Center, and that the second plane was another plane, perhaps hijacked, was then flown in to the second tower. Dan, tell me about people on the ground. Are you at a vantage point where you can see what's happening on the ground?
I'm farther up in the West Village. I'm not on the ground near the base of the towers.
Where were you when it actually happened?
I was walking down 7th Avenue south at about Charles Street, which is about 15 or 20 blocks north of the towers.
Well, obviously, this was a shocking thing for you to witness on this Tuesday morning, with some wires just came out and said in 1945, an Army Air Corps B-25, a twin-engine bomber, crashed into the 79th floor of the Empire State Building. That occurred in dense fog. This was a crystal clear day in Manhattan. So it is completely unclear how there would be any kind of problems with visibility. Dan, thank you so much for talking with us. Hopefully you can stay on the phone and we can check back in with you at another point in time. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
We want to also remind people that the World Trade Center bombing that took place on February 26th back in 1993, the product of a terrorist attack, the result of a terrorist attack that killed 6 people and injured more than 1,000. Of course, that happened on a Friday afternoon. I think, Matt, you and Al were working that day.
We were.
I know I was at home in Virginia watching it in disbelief, and now it feels a bit like deja vu. But, of course, this is so much more bizarre.
Yeah, no question. And you keep in mind that killed 6 people, injured 1,000, and the explosion happened in a garage in the basement. This was a direct hit on the midsection or upper section of the tower, so the potential for injuries and death much larger. Of course, also some people on the planes.
Yeah,
that's right. Exactly. If they were hijacked and they were en route to a different destination, of course, this story continues to unfold. Bob Kerr joins us now. Bob, where are you and what can you tell us?
Katie, good morning. I'm on the north lawn at the White House, and the first thing we look for here in light of what's happened is whether there is any unusual activity out here, whether there's an unusual police or Secret Service presence, people on the roof, that sort of thing. We don't see that as we speak. I did try to call the National Security Office here. As you know, the president is out of town. He is in Florida. We're told he has been informed of this. I can tell you that the White House National Security staff that remains here is in a senior level meeting, and we're hoping to hear from them as soon as possible. But Katie, the reaction here to the pictures you're seeing and to the initial pictures when they came up, even in what's called the lower press office here at the White House, was one of shock. I mean, people are just standing around television monitors looking at this. And when I say people, I don't mean just the reporters. I mean the people who are actually in the office who work here at the White House.
So very little information is coming out of the White House at this juncture, but needless to say, if the speculation is true about some kind of terrorist event, this will be a major, major crisis for the Bush administration. Jim Miklaszewski is at the Pentagon now. Mick, are you hearing any more information from there?
Well, according to U.S. intelligence officials, Katie, there appeared, at least to their knowledge, to be no specific threat involving hijacking airliners or any attacks on buildings in the New York area. U.S. intelligence officials report this morning that there are, they constantly are hearing about threats, possible terrorist threats against American targets worldwide, but as far as they know this morning, they had no early indications that anything of this nature could have occurred. Pentagon officials are already calling this a terrorist attack. They say that they have not yet ordered the scrambling of any military jets. If National Guard were to be scrambled in that area, that would be at the order of the governor. Now, of course, the president does have the authority to scramble American military forces in defense, but there's a problem here. What now do you defend against exactly? If you put warplanes in the air, there's always a danger that they could misidentify a pilot's intention.
Susan?
Although I believe, according to officials here,
I just wanted to tell you guys,
if
you want to continue,
are now off limits and restricted. But so far, the U.S. military and Pentagon officials are scrambling to get as much information as they possibly can to determine what course of action, if any, the U.S. military would take.
But, Mick, they are describing this as a terrorist attack right now.
There are some officials here in the Pentagon who are calling this an obvious terrorist attack based on very preliminary information. The information that intelligence officials are getting in terms of a possible hijacked plane, and of course the very horrifying video of the plane veering into the tower itself is a clear indication to everyone here that this is not an accident.
All right, Jim Miklaszewski, thanks. And of course, the coordination that took place to have two planes hit the towers within 18 minutes of one another. Let's go back to the White House now. Bob Kerr is still standing by there. Bob, what can you tell us?
Well, Matt, it was interesting to listen to Jim Miklaszewski there from the Pentagon. Of course, the president has the authority to scramble military forces, and this is a case, obviously, in which retaliation, if indeed it proves to be a terrorist incident, will be contemplated. But the usual course of events is it's an investigation. You know, unless someone steps forward, claims responsibility, the White House and other arms of the U.S. government will say, we have to determine who is responsible for this attack, try to pinpoint it, and then the U.S. usually says someone is going to be made to pay. But that is a big if we can determine exactly the origin of this terrorist attack. And so there are some implications to that.
Let's go back to Jim Miklaszewski. Bob, thank you, at the Pentagon. Mick, you have more information?
Well, Katie, Bob's exactly right, but what their primary concern right now is protecting the American public in the New York area right now against any possible further attacks by the air. They have no indications there will be, but there is some concern that since this appeared to be such a highly coordinated attack, that there may be other terrorist attacks that could be planned either in New York or elsewhere. This is absolutely the worst-case scenario for the counterterrorist planners because apparently, according to intelligence officials,